So one of the things that's important when we have younger kids and our littles and our athletes is understanding growth spurts and meeting the athlete where they're at when we have significant changes in height and how their bodies adjust to that new length of their limbs is important. And it's important for us as coaches and as instructors or parents to meet them where they're at and help them understand that it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to their new body. And at the same time, we can provide things outside of just pitching that are going to be more important to allow them to adapt to their new lengths and then also bring that into their pitch. Here we see an athlete who, in about a 3 to 4 month time frame, we see a growth of over 4 inches. So the athlete there on the left-hand side, this was her first test. The second is after her growth spurt. What we can see right away is there's a lot more instability just on the descent and the ascent phase of just a normal squat. The other thing we can't see here is she lifts her heels up to squat now, even as she leans forward. We look at that left side. Yeah, we had the feet turning out, maybe a little flattening. But when we look at an athlete understanding that the strategy for them to accomplish the task of squatting, we can also look at that as she understands that she can't do it in a certain way. So she self-adjusted so that she can allow herself to squat and then come back up. So when we see changes like this, one of the things and tests that we do, which she's standing on her force plates. So for me personally, I take into account someone's ability to express strength vertically and relative to their body weight. So when she took that first test in October of 24, she was 93 pounds and her vertical jump peak force was about 228 on average. This was 245% of her body weight. When she came back and when we saw the instability, she'd gained some weight, but she was taller, which if you get taller, you're naturally going to gain some weight. There was no improvement in velocity, and her ability to produce force actually went down on average 30 pounds. That with the weight gain meant that she was unable to manage and yield to that new weight as well as she could before. Oftentimes in these cases, we see certain things happen in the pitch that we freak out. We start to make all these decisions that just what she looks like as a pitch instead of meeting the athlete where they're at. We can see that from that time to this time, about 3 months, she gained some more weight, but she was able, after giving her some outside stuff to do, some strength work, some body weight work on her own individually that she did by herself, we got to stabilize more of that vertical jump to body weight ratio. She popped back up to over 200%. And also within that time frame, this device right here measures acceleration in our back foot and front foot. We can see when she first tested, she would gain momentum pretty well. Her back foot would push, and then the peak of her acceleration with her right foot would be higher. And then we'd see her stabilize and accelerate into delivery. When we got to that 2.8 timeline, when she had increased in height, she no longer was able to gain momentum consistently from her front foot, which is where we see that decline. And we don't see her stabilize well enough to measure any rate of acceleration anymore in her landing. This was the final one, which was taken here 8.4, where after a summer of structured strength work, structured training at home, and doing things that helped her find herself in her pitch, we saw an increase in 6 miles an hour of her velocity. We saw an increase from that space to where she was back to baseline to 20 pounds on average in her vertical production. And we saw it come back to where not only is she gaining momentum, those peaks are higher, and we're reestablishing stability at landing. So now that she's accelerating to the pitch, now she gets to use that new length. Now she gets to use that new weight and deliver it into the ball. So it's one of the things that's very important when your athlete has a growth spurt where they have any change, significant losses of weight, significant gains of weight, significant increases in power or strength. These are all going to be variables of where we need to look outside the pitching space to meet the athlete where they're at, have more grace in what they look like in a full pitching motion, because that will change, and address the right things and give them confidence in knowing that we're going to regain the stability and function that you had before, and then be able to add those new attributes, height, weight, power, into the pitch to show increases in performance on that end.